Big Daddies, originally named Protectors, and occasionally referred to as Mr. Bubbles or Mr. B by Little Sisters, and Metal Daddies by Splicers, are genetically enhanced human beings who have had their skin and organs grafted into an armored diving suit, with Alpha Series being an apparent exception to the grafting process, though still heavily spliced. Their primary purpose is to protect Little Sisters whilst they escort them around Rapture. Hey everyone, this is Brock from Brock and Sindri, back for our third video in our Bioshock Lore series. And obviously this week, in this episode, we're looking at the Big Daddies. What is all the lore behind them? How were they formed? What are they? Let's get straight in, and we'll start with gameplay. So if all of the Little Sisters have either been harvested or saved in a level, Big Daddies will wander to a vent like usual and bang on it. However, a Little Sister will not come out, causing the Big Daddy to groan in frustration and bang again before letting out a sad moan and walk away in an attempt to find another Little Sister. Aside from the Alpha Series, Big Daddies communicate by uttering haunting sounds similar to that of whale calls. Alpha Series communicate with low, inhuman grunts and roars. For easier interpretation, production model Big Daddies have a bioluminescent chemical substance which filled the helmet, displaying its state of emotional mind. The Big Daddy has 3 different colours he will display. Green indicates the Big Daddy is hypnotized and friendly. Yellow indicates awareness but indifference to his environment. However, he will react to people near him by shoving them. If the Big Daddy has a little sister with him and the player continuously stands in his way, the Big Daddy will become enraged in order to protect the threatened little sister. And finally, red indicates rage towards assailants. The surviving Alpha Series from Bioshock 2 are in a permanent state of wrath due to prolonged separation from their little sisters. This does exclude subjects Delta and Sigma owing to their unique circumstance. Big Daddies were originally created by Dr. Yi-Su Chong to serve as Rapture's maintenance workers to help in later construction projects, and to do the menial work of Rapture that was not profitable. Rosies riveted panels and windows while bouncers drilled deep sea rocks and minerals for further city expansion. As the demand for Adam skyrocketed, Su Chong proposed the idea of recycling the raw genetic material directly from the corpses of dead splicers instead of exclusively producing it with Little Sisters in their laboratories. With the genetically modified girls at great risk when out on the streets, gathering Adam on their own, the Protector program was initiated to bond them to the hulking Big Daddies, turning the latter into protectors who would respond aggressively to any threat encountered by the gatherers. Su Chong suggested this idea to Andrew Ryan, knowing that becoming a Big Daddy was a one-way street, but he fretted about not being able to find suitable candidates. However, Ryan gave assurances that it would not be a problem. While the true identities of most of the candidates were unknown, many were exiled criminals, the criminally insane, and political dissidents imprisoned in Persephone, which was under the management of Augustus Sinclair, the owner of the plasmid research company Sinclair Solutions. With the help of Sophia Lamb, who was herself imprisoned at Persephone at that time, and acting as a psychiatrist for the other inmates, Sinclair would send chosen test subjects from Persephone to both Fontaine Futuristics and Ryan Industries. Experiments were conducted by Dr. Gilbert Alexander in the research labs of Fontaine Futuristics. The first Protector prototypes bonded to Little Sisters were called the Alpha Series, who were previously plasmid test subjects from Sinclair Solutions. Alexander took inspiration from a common nickname for the Protector program candidates, Big Daddies, and engineered a conditioned bond between the Protectors and their charges, which would mimic, through mental and physical restraints, the emotional bond between a father and his daughter, the pair bond. This bond ensured that the Protectors would guard their charges at all times and not wander away from the girls, otherwise they would slip into a coma. After many unsuccessful attempts, the first candidate from the Protector program to be successfully pair bonded was Subject Delta, a deep-sea diver formerly known as Johnny Topside, who had discovered and entered the city by accident. In a short time though, the Alpha series failed to be practical as protectors, as they only protected a single specific little sister, and if they were lost to splicers or rescued by Dr. Bridget Tenenbaum, that rendered the protectors useless, sending them into a coma or making them suicidally aggressive. Even after being reprogrammed, they were only usable as combatants, with no other thought than to kill their target. With these unsuccessful results, the Alpha series was put to an end. The remaining Alpha models were deactivated and in the following years kept in holding at Fontaine Futuristics, Minerva's Den, and Persephone. Regardless of his colleagues' progress, Suchong was also working on a Bond of his own creation, albeit without success. Meanwhile, over in Columbia's reality, Jeremiah Fink, an industrial tycoon who previously used trans-dimensional tears to steal Rapture's technological advancements, was trying to work on his own kind of protector, based on Suchong's work, the Songbird. Like Suchong though, Fink had reached an impasse while trying to bond the creature to a single child, Elizabeth. In 1958, he contacted Suchong through a tear that the Rapture scientist was actively studying at the former Silverfin restaurant in Fontaine's department store, and they both came to an agreement to share their research in order to reach their mutual objective. However, Songbird accidentally bonded itself to its test subject, and Fink chose to put an end to his partnership, eventually closing his imprinting studies labs at Fink Manufacturing. Suchong, who got the short end of the bargain, was still looking for the solution in genetic compatibility. Using the Lutece device still left in his possession, he intended to steal a DNA sample of Fink's bonded test subject, but his research was put on hold when the city council closed the department store to turn it into a prison for Fontaine's criminal gang. His tear device was eventually damaged by vandals, but could still be remotely controlled from his clinic and secret lab at Artemis Suites, Apollo Square. And on December 31st, Suchong finally acquired the DNA sample from Elizabeth herself, ironically unknown to him that she was the same test subject who once bonded to Songbird, as she'd gone to the restaurant to repair the Lutece device to return to Colombia. 2 weeks later, the civil war initiated by the bombing of the Kashmir restaurant's New Year's Eve masquerade ball led to a panic bank crash and an atom shortage as citizens spliced heavily in order to protect themselves. This brought the need for functioning protectors more important now than ever. Suchong's genetic protection bond attempt proved a failure as the Big Daddies still ignored the girls. While he fussed over this, unknown to him, Elizabeth provided the solution to two little sisters in his own laboratory. Inject a dying Big Daddy with Adam to save him. This caused the bouncer to bond to both little sisters, Letta and Masha Latz, and the girls went to tell Suchong about what happened. However, Suchong, deep in his work and growing frustrated, failed to notice the Big Daddy's change in behavior and smacked Lita away during a recording of his failed Lot 255 results. This triggered the aggressive response of the bouncer, who then impaled Suchong with his drill to the scientist's own desk, proving the bond had worked, but at the cost of Suchong's own life. With this breakthrough, it led to the further bonding of Big Daddies to little sisters, where pheromones were used to make the girls attracted to the Big Daddies and not be afraid of them as they had been previously. With the bonding system now working, the Memorial Museum at Point Prometheus was changed to the proving grounds to be used for Big Daddy training. And as the Big Daddies and Little Sisters were sent out onto the streets of Rapture, citizens responded to them in different ways. Though many were disgusted as the Big Daddy's intimidating appearance and aggressive conditioning caused fear among the populace and resulted in several unfortunate accidents. Confrontations with splicers and well-meaning citizens prompted Andrew Ryan to broadcast public address announcements to warn against approaching the Big Daddies and Little Sisters. Ryan tried to combat public dislike of the Protector program by having the Big Daddies described as knights in shining armor and created to protect Rapture against the parasites. As the violence on the streets became more extreme, elite versions of the Bouncer and Rosie were created to help defend Little Sisters in the more dangerous areas of the city. Ryan even commissioned a third model of Protector to be created by Rapture Central Computing using the help of the Thinker, and so the Lancer, considered to be the most advanced Big Daddy so far, was created along with the new ion laser weapon. Despite the new Protector being finished, it never left Minerva's den, as Reed Weil sealed off the entire facility from the rest of Rapture. By the end of the Civil War in 1960, many Big Daddies had fallen to the attacks of Splice's and Atlas's rebels and littered the corridors of Rapture. However, more remained active, roaming from one vent to another to call on Little Sisters to start another cycle of gathering. Years after the death of Andrew Ryan and after Sophia Lamb took control, Adam gathering continued until the remaining Little Sisters in Rapture were too old to be able to process the raw genetic material. The remaining Big Daddies continued to maintain the city in a viable state as per their original design. The older sisters were then turned into Big Sisters by Dr. Alexander, one of the few remaining scientists at Fontaine Futuristics. He conditioned them as enforcers and provided them with diving suit gear similar to those of Big Daddies, producing a new fear for the Splicers. And in 1967, Lamb, requiring new Little Sisters and the Adam they produced, sent Big Sisters out to kidnap little girls from the surface. However, Splicers continued to evolve over the years, making them more effective in ambushing Big Daddies, and this forced Alexander to create a new model of Protector, the Rumbler, which was designed to effectively dispatch larger groups of enemies. In 1968, Bridget Tenenbaum returned to Rapture to free the new Little Sisters, foiling Lamb's plan for perfecting her utopia and to find a cure for Adam. With the help of Lamb's daughter and former little sister Eleanor Lamb, and the artificial intelligence still monitoring the city's automation, the Thinker, she reactivated two Alpha series, Subject Delta, Eleanor's former pair-bonded protector, and Subject Sigma, previously Charles Milton Porter, the initial creator of the Thinker. Both Alpha series regained part of their humanity and free will, which helped them complete their own objectives. Delta, guided by Sinclair, and Sigma by the Thinker, who was impersonating Porter. Their opponents, a genetically mutated and insane Alexander, Sophia Lamb, and Reed Weil, reactivated other broken Alpha series and used them as soldiers to try to stop the rogue Protectors. The last known Alpha series created was Sinclair, Subject Omega, done by Sophia Lamb to fight Delta as part of her escape plan, which ultimately failed. And from the time of its founding, maintenance of Rapture required trained divers in reinforced suits to walk outside along the seafloor to repair leaks and reinforce the city's structure. And by the time of the Protector program's tests, certain former citizens of Rapture had been genetically altered with Adam and permanently sealed inside the special diving suits to become what would eventually be called Big Daddies. They were genetically modified and conditioned in the research labs and facilities of Point Prometheus. Protector training was eventually done in the proving grounds. The candidates for induction into the Protector program went through voice box modification and pheromone application, which attracted the Little Sisters. After those, the candidates' skin and organs were grafted and integrated into their suit to become one functional unit. The subjects were then placed in large vats of an unknown yellow substance and eventually reduced to mindless servitors. Through genetic splicing, the humans inside the heavy suits were given enhanced strength and durability. Their suit exoskeletons contained the life support machinery needed to keep them alive during their duties, allowing a Big Daddy to lift heavy loads and do other strenuous tasks, as well as resist the cold and pressure of the deep ocean. In Bioshock, Bioshock 2, and Burial at Sea, Big Daddies can be seen performing both internal and external maintenance repairs. Big Daddies were also ordered to periodically return to facilities like Hephaestus for routine maintenance checkups. And so far there are 5 main types of Big Daddy Protectors, including 2 elite versions for only the Bouncer and Rosie. Of the 5 Protectors, the latest 4 are functional and protect the Little Sisters as the original Alpha series. with the exception of Subject Delta, were marked as a failure. Bouncers are clad in a very distinct heavy diving suit, the entire torso of which is covered by a thick metal carapace. The head protrudes directly forward from the upper chest area and is encased in a hemispherical helmet studded with 8 lit portholes. A large, fully functional conical drill is attached to the right arm, just forward of the elbow, and is used for powerful melee attacks. The bouncers get their name from their will to protect their bonded little sisters. Both a regular and a red striped elite version with a harpoon-like drill appear in Bioshock and Bioshock 2. In the Bioshock Infinite Burial at Sea DLC, the bouncer can use the drill as a grappling hook to get around Rapture's infrastructure quicker, and also to get closer to those that threaten a little sister. It is a new feature for that tool/weapon that's not been seen in previous games. A note found in Sutron's clinic states that the gas that launches the drill bit makes the subject somehow unstable, suggesting that the feature was discontinued in subsequent bouncers and explaining its absence in chronologically later games. In concept art of the game, a bouncer model with 2 flathead drills is seen. However, this version was removed when the developers decided they wanted the Big Daddies to interact with the Little Sisters. The model can be found in the Museum of Orphaned Concepts. Rosies are clad in a basic heavy flexible fabric diving suit, the upper torso of which is covered by a high-gauge metal carapace. Their head is guarded by a thick metal diving helmet welded to the torso carapace and has 3 large lit portholes. They wield large rivet guns and proximity mines at long range and use the rivet gun for powerful melee attacks as well. A red striped elite version is present in the original Bioshock. The Rumbler is the newest type of Big Daddy and debuts in Bioshock 2. Designed by Gilbert Alexander, his arsenal includes deployable mini turrets and a shoulder-mounted RPG that shoots non-guided rockets. These Big Daddy types seems to be more mobile than the other 2 types, although less armored. Its combat style gives it an advantage in open spaces, unlike its 2 counterparts, and it seems to fare well in long to mid-range combat. Its attacks are designed to keep the player on the move, and it can quickly turn the environment to its advantage and give the player as little cover as possible. A very formidable foe, to say the least. Like Subject Delta, other failed prototypes of the Alpha series of Daddies did survive. They have long since lost their sisters and have devolved into something vaguely like a splicer. These are barely sentient monsters that attack anything near them. Like Delta, they can use plasmids and regularly emit bursts of electrobolt, incinerate, and winter blast from their malfunctioning suits. They tend to use launchers, machine guns, and shotguns in addition to their plasmids. Their armor is similar to Delta's, but more decayed, with parts of their arms exposed. Their bonds were to be to a single little sister, with Delta being the first success. Because of this, they are believed to not have undergone some of the modifications later Big Daddies have, such as the application of pheromones. There was no need due to their physiologically enforced bond to a single little sister. They were not fused into their suits, so for example, Subject Delta could remove his helmet when he was ordered to by Sophia Lamb. Many of the Alpha series subjects appear to have had incomplete or otherwise faulty bonds, so that instead of slipping into a coma after losing their little sisters, they simply went mad. Minerva's Den, which was Bioshock 2's final DLC, features a new type of Big Daddy. The Lancer is much slimmer, slightly taller, and more decorated than their counterparts. They also hold an ion laser and appears to be a finished version of the Deco Rosie as seen in concept art and as a statue in the main campaign. This is the only type of Big Daddy the player encounters in the Minerva's Den DLC aside from the Alpha series. There are 6 named Big Daddies so far in the Bioshock series. Jack, the protagonist of the original Bioshock, briefly disguised himself as a rosy Big Daddy in order to follow Frank Fontaine's trail. Knuckles, a friend of Louis McGrath and inmate of Persephone, who was turned into a Big Daddy. Mark Meltzer, who was turned into a Rumbler Big Daddy after being captured by Sophia Lamb in Bioshock 2. Subject Delta, the Alpha series protagonist of Bioshock 2. Augustus Sinclair, who was turned into the last Alpha series Subject Omega after being captured by Sophia Lamb in Bioshock 2. and Subject Sigma, the Alpha series protagonist of the Minerva's Den DLC story. Even though Big Daddies can only be male, with the exception of the 3 female multiplayer characters, which is not accounted for due to the inconsistency, there are at least 2 concepts for Big Daddy females. One of Rob Waters' slug bug concepts has the Big Daddy with a slug attached to the helmet, and one version without a helmet, showing a violet-haired woman inside. The woman is actually a reused, unrelated illustration by Rob Water of a 60s Mama Bear character. Opus Arts did a reimagining picture of the Vita Chamber for Bioshock 2 with an alternate generation of Big Daddies and Big Mamas. Bioshock 2 created an issue in continuity between the original game and the later installment in the series, as that it depicted Dr. Suchong as having been killed by a Big Daddy before the 1958 New Year's Eve riots, and his colleague Gil Alexander taking over the Protector program after his death, and successfully bonding Subject Delta to Eleanor Lamb before the same event. And in order to keep Bioshock 2 in the continuity of the series, both Alexander's work as told in the second game and Suchong's as seen as Burial at Sea Episode 2 are considered here as happening in parallel, since Suchong's death is the only discrepancy between the background of those 2 stories. One of the early versions for the plot of Bioshock 2 had Subject Delta responsible for Suchong's death under the command of Sophia Lamb. She acted in order to give control of the Protector program to Alexander, who was already faithful to her. Moreover, in this plot, the reason for Delta to travel to Persephone was not because of his mental constraining him to remain close to his little sister, but to locate Sophia Lamb's atom supply that she made from the new gatherings and without which he could not survive. According to Bioshock 2 director Jordan Thomas, the series' Big Daddies move slower when you aren't facing them to prevent players from dying in utter confusion as to where that giant drill arm came from. And that's all of our lore on Big Daddies in general. What do you think of Big Daddies? Sufficiently scary and creepy? For me, they sort of remind me of bad guys, evil things, creatures from Doctor Who, actually, to be honest. We'll probably look at the Little Sisters next week and go on from there. Alright, well guys, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you think in the comments and see you in the next Bioshock video.